The following is an original production of AZPM News.
For AZPM, I'm Mark McLemore, and this is Arizona Spotlight. Coming up, a conversation with Marsha Bemko, who's been the producer of the PBS series Antiques Roadshow for 25 years. And storyteller and novelist Jeff Hartman shares the story behind an unforgettable Alaskan adventure. Those stories are next on Arizona Spotlight. The public television series The Antiques Roadshow visited Tucson on May 19th, and fans of the show and members of AZPM came out in droves to be part of the experience. It gave me the chance to talk with Marsha Bemko, who's been producing Antiques Roadshow for 25 years, about the unique qualities of the show, where people find out if their obscure flea market finds or quirky family heirlooms have more than just sentimental value.
Wow, that's a really interesting question. The whole truth, and nothing but the whole truth for you, is that when I first started working at Roadshow, I was number 2. I was the senior producer for 4 years. And when I first got asked to do it, I was not happy. I came from documentary. I'd been working on Frontline and other things. And it was sort of this little snobby attitude about Roadshow then. It still is. But who pays attention to that? Everybody likes to watch us.
Yeah.
And at the time, my children were very young, who are now mothers. And we were touring in the summer when my kids were away. And I said, I don't want to be away all summer while, I can get like some kid off time. So I reluctantly agreed to do Roadshow. And Peter McGee, vice president of national programming, said, well, if you don't like it, you don't have to stay. Clearly, I liked it. I fell in love with it, and I'm still in love with it. It is such a joy to produce, such a joy to learn from. Every show I watch, I'm still learning. So when I think back to that reluctance, I thank Peter McGee for telling me to try it on.
In Tucson, thrifting is a way of life. I used to call Tucson the thrift store capital of America. I don't know if that's accurate. Antiquing has always been a little too rich for my blood, but thrift store searching, even yesterday I was at the library rummage sale. Has that been an important part of your life for you, Marsha?
Well, especially when I was younger, when I didn't have any money. That's how I furnished my house, was thrifting. And it's everywhere now. It's not just here. It's all over the country.
Yeah.
People are thrifting. You see it everywhere on social media. How do you fix up your thrift finds to make them even more presentable, should that be needed? First, furnishing your home. And you have no plates, and you have no seat, and you have nothing. That's how you buy this stuff. It's affordable then. Yeah.
So exciting about hearing the executive producer of Antiques Roadshow talk about thrifting. There's something really magnetic. Antiques Roadshow, I asked my mom, do you watch it? And she said, every week. I didn't even know.
Let me tell you about that mum word. So when I meet young people, very young. They're 20, that kind of young. And so when I tell them what I do, which I don't tell them unless they ask, because it depends, the reaction can be embarrassing. You know what they say back to me? My mother loves that show. So I say, what about you?
They love it too.
Well, they do. And a funny thing happened on social media that Hannah Auerbach, our manager of social media, told me about a segment on TikTok. They love it. And they suggest to her, why don't we make a TV show out of that? So they love it once they know us.
You've been there. You've done that.
Yeah.
Tell me about your assessors, your appraisers, the relationship that you built up with the people whose word you have to trust on this show.
Well, our appraisers are amazing. They are scholars at what they do. They are passionate about what they do. I've seen grown men cry because they're seeing an object they waited a lifetime to see. They are true geeks who have figured out how to make a living out of a passion that they have. They tend to be the children of auctioneers, dealers, collectors, and we're dragged around every weekend as a little person to these types of events where people like that go. And so they come to it from a long history, very often, of being with it, and they love it. I think the big thing most people don't know about our experts, we work with a group of about 150, assign about 70 to every city, is that they're volunteers. They are unpaid. They also pay their own airfare wherever we're going, and they pay their own hotel nights. What we pay for is when we shoot the show, we're going to give them both breakfast and lunch. That's what we pay for. They collectively donate to Antiques Roadshow every season 7 figures worth of services. That's public television. And this station, where I'm sitting right now in this room, will supply us with 120 volunteers tomorrow. They're going to get paid lunch, breakfast, hat, T-shirt, an appraisal, okay? But if we had to put out dollars to them, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. We are truly the public in public television. Most of the people who are on the set of Antiques Roadshow who are working are unpaid.
What's a personal story that has changed who you are, Marsha?
That's a really good question. I get asked a lot of questions. I haven't been, that one hasn't been asked to me. I will tell you about something we found in Boise that impacted me emotionally. A Japanese-American woman brought in internment camp art when the Japanese were interned that her uncle had made of this. It impacted me so because I got her perspective on what that was like for her family. It impacted me so that she's one of the few guests over my many years of doing Antiques Roadshow. We're taping season 31. I've been doing it for 25 of those years. That I sobbed with her. Because I think one of the beauties of Antiques Roadshow, and if you're ever on the set, you can feel it, is that everybody coming that day has the same question. Help me understand what I own. That's a very bonding, common thing. And people are really nice to each other all day long. Whatever their politics, whatever it is that might make them have a different conversation outside of Antiques Roadshow doesn't happen on our set because they are bonded by wanting to know more about what they own. For me, learning that from her was impactful, really impactful, and gave me an insight into something I had no idea about. Really powerful.
What keeps it fresh? 25 years. You're here in Tucson. You're going to do it again tomorrow. Why?
The people who come. All the people who we'll see who come to Antiques Roadshow are unique. And they have their own story. Story is king. So they keep it fresh. Their excitement keeps it fresh. And if you've been watching Antiques Roadshow from the beginning, and I hope you have been if you're listening to this, then you know you've seen appraisers come and go. Over the course of all our years, we've worked with about 500 people, always a pool of about 150. People retire, people do other things, whatever happens. So you're seeing appraisers you didn't see on our set 30 years ago. As a matter of fact, we're cutting now season 1 to present later this year so you could see those really old shows. And we, on staff, haven't seen some of those appraisers before. So I think the appraisers keep it fresh. The people keep it fresh. Good stories keep it fresh. We moved outside. We're not in convention centers anymore. That keeps it fresh. It's a reality television show. I have no idea what's going to happen other than we'll tape appraisals. That keeps it fresh for us who work it, too.
On behalf of public broadcasting, listeners, fans, viewers, thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate anyone who's listening who supports public television, who supports Arizona public media, and of course, my baby, Antiques Roadshow.
I spoke with Marsha Bemko, the producer of public television's Antiques Roadshow. There can be something very powerful about a single voice sharing a true story. It's a chance for the storyteller to let their personality shine and forge new connections with anyone who listens. In support of this important tradition, Arizona Spotlight features a different storyteller each month. Here is Tony Paniagua with an introduction.
Thank you, Mark. Our special guest this month is Jeff Hartman. Jeff Hartman is a retired educator who worked at Biosphere 2 north of Tucson for 5 years. After that, he was a teacher and administrator at City High School in downtown Tucson from 2005 to 2017. Then he taught science and math at Nosotros Academy. In retirement, two of his passions are traveling to different locations and writing.
My name is Jeff Hartman, and my story is called 3 Months in the Arctic. On March 1st, 1980, at the age of 25, I was dropped off for 3 months on a frozen lake in the middle of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge with my best friend, Chris, 1,500 pounds of food and gear, and two guys I didn't know. The closest point of human contact was Arctic Village, an Athabascan Indian settlement 110 miles away through the mountains on skis. We had no means of communication with the outside world, and no one was scheduled to check on us. 3 of us originally planned to go on the trip, but when our third friend bailed at the last minute, Chris and I decided we needed 1 or 2 more people for safety reasons. If one of us broke his leg, we need one person to stay with the injured man while the others skied out to Arctic Village for help. Then Chris met Dan at a church picnic and invited him to go. Dan said he had a friend named Adam who was up for adventure, and that's how I ended up going to the Arctic with my best friend and 2 strangers. The ostensible reason for the trip was so Chris could collect grizzly bear scat. He planned to take the specimens back to Oregon State University to try to identify individual bears by their intestinal parasites and then come up with a population estimate. That's what we told our parents anyway. But the real reason we went, at least me and Chris, was to experience true wilderness in all its glory. Unfortunately, we soon found that was impossible for us to do with Dan and Adam around. We were extroverts. They were introverts. We were vulgar and loud and had come to the Arctic to cut loose. They were thoughtful and quiet and had come to reflect. Initially, we agreed to pool all our food and that each pair would take turns cooking dinners. However, the first night we discovered they'd brought bland, prepackaged meals, lots of Lipton tea, and a carefully rationed amount of butter, whereas we brought an extensive array of dried fruits, meats, and vegetables, an assortment of spices and teas, and tons of butter. They approached cooking as if it was a chore, while we approached it as if we were pulling one over on the rest of the world by making gourmet meals while everyone thought we were suffering. Sadly, we also discovered the first night that our alcohol, several bottles of Yukon Jack, hadn't made it. We blamed the baggage handlers at Fairbanks Airport and the fact that we cleverly packaged it in a cardboard box labeled Yukon Jack. Once our Last Lake base camp was established, Chris was ready to cruise. That is, pack as much food on his back as he could and head out for as long as possible to see as much country as possible. That was my goal as well, though I had a lot to learn before I could keep up with Chris. Dan wanted to test his limits, but he was very safety conscious and did everything by the book. He insisted all of us stay in visual contact whenever we were out skiing together, which Chris refused to do since Adam couldn't keep up. Adam seemed depressed and spent most of his time in base camp, sitting close to the stove on one of the 5-gallon buckets that doubled as chairs, pretending to read Buddenbrooks by Thomas Mann, but never turning the page. We worried about Adam, but Dan assured us he was fine. We tried to make it work. I attempted to build a few bridges, and Chris and I privately discussed ways we could respectfully approach Dan and Adam with our concerns. But that never happened because Chris exploded one night and told the other 2 to get the fudge out of camp. We didn't come to blows, which was fortunate given we were the only 4 human beings within hundreds of square miles and we were depending on each other. But things got heated. Chris declared that Dan and Adam needed to leave base camp for one day so he and I could divide the food in half, sing songs as loud as we wanted to, and then we were going to move upriver. We'd generously leave them all the community gear, and after that they'd only see us if there was an emergency or we came back to gather more food from our carefully stored provisions. I distinctly remember thinking, ready or not, here we go. 2 days later, we skied 8 miles upriver and established Congacut Base Camp. We explored the area for 10 days, then decided to ski to Arctic Village to get more chocolate, since the boys weren't very good at rationing. We headed back to Last Lake Base Camp to resupply, enjoyed a civil night with Dan and Adam, and then spent the next 11 days cruising through the perpetual twilight to Arctic Village. We stayed in the village 4 days, then returned to Last Lake base camp on a bush plane and discovered Dan and Adam had left us a polite note saying they were gone on a 2-day hike. So we got loud, divided the plunder, split the chocolate 60-40, restocked our backpacks, and had an exquisite dinner ready when Dan and Adam returned. They were both unusually talkative and full of vitality. Adam looked better than we'd ever seen him. The following morning, Chris and I took off again, intending to thread our way through the Brooks Range and ski out to the Arctic Ocean. We never made it to the Arctic Plains because it got too warm and the crust went out, but I spent 25 days cruising through the wilderness with my best friend, chasing grizzly bears, and simply eating, sleeping, and moving through time and space. We returned to Last Lake a few days before the plane was set to pick us up, having seen Dan and Adam just 2 nights out of the last 52, and spent our last glorious days packing up base camp. If we'd agreed to be their safety valve on this trip, we definitely failed that test, but the 4 of us were ecstatic we'd all survived. All's well that ends well. And that's how it would have ended, except that when we finally got back to the Fairbanks airport, we discovered our missing Yukon Jack in the trunk of Chris's Chevy Nova. Somehow Dan, who'd agreed to take responsibility for bringing the last load of gear down to the plane when we were getting ready to fly in, had left the liquor in the trunk. And that's when it dawned on me and Chris that Dan had purposefully left our Yukon Jack behind so his friend Adam, who was an alcoholic, wouldn't be tempted on our trip. Dan had brought his best friend to the Arctic to help him quit drinking cold turkey, and he hadn't told us. We left them both by the side of the road and never saw them again.
Jeff Hartman, that is a great story. Amazing. Thank you very much for being with us here in the studio.
My pleasure.
So I'm just curious, whatever happened with your search for grizzly bears? Most people are trying to stay away from them, and here you and Chris were looking for them.
We were, and actually we saw one, and I definitely remember the moment when we looked at it from far away, and all of a sudden Chris said, "Let's go," and he ran toward it. And I thought, oh man, okay, here we go again. But we tried to stalk up on the bear, and we got within about 60 yards before it noticed us and then sprinted away. It was a young bear having fun playing Frisbee with a dead parka squirrel, and we just snuck up on it as best we could. And we saw a lot of sign, but that was actually the only bear we saw on that trip.
And it's amazing because when we think of Alaska, and especially the very isolated parts of the state, we think, oh, they're everywhere and they're out to get you and so on. Maybe like what people think about us here in Arizona with rattlesnakes and Gila monsters.
Well, the Arctic is very different than other parts of Alaska. It's so big and so vast, and it's like the tree line of the world. So animals have to cover so much territory up there. It's not like Southeast. Those stories might be way more applicable to Southeast. But, like I said, that's such a big open country up in the Arctic. Chris did earn a master's degree in veterinary parasitology, so he did continue to do that kind of work. And he actually ended up meeting his wife and teaching school up in Arctic Village for 8 years. So Chris became a real Arctic aficionado.
Fantastic. And you are yourself a retired educator.
Yes.
And originally from Chicago, but you moved here from Minnesota, was it?
Minnesota, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that journey, how you ended up in Tucson?
Oh, God, I went from Chicago to Oregon because I wanted to be a marine biologist, and then life took me to Minnesota, and then down here in Tucson. And believe it or not, I found my marine biology outlet here in Tucson through Sato and through taking high school students to Sato when I worked at City High School.
I know what Sato is, but can you explain it to the audience, please?
Sato is the Center for the Study of Deserts and Oceans, and it's a binational organization that has a field station down in Rocky Point and an office up here in Tucson. And, they conduct research on the Northern Gulf. And at the time, my goal was just to get kids out in the field and show them as much country and as much different environments as we could. I worked at a couple other schools, and I worked at Nosotros on the west side, and I remember taking kids to Mount Lemmon, and over half the class had never been up there.
Since you've retired, you've written 3 novels. What would you like to say about them?
Just that's what I do now. I've always wanted to write, and I've written all throughout my life, but I'm finally at the point where I can write the books that I want, and my goals are to write and travel and be with my family.
What does writing do for you? Because some people want to retire and not do anything, or at least, maybe golf or just relax. But what does it do for you spiritually, mentally?
I write because I want to tell a greater truth, and that's why I write fiction and not nonfiction. And a lot of times I start with something that means a lot to me, but then the story just takes hold and it goes where it goes. So it's really, the creation process is a lot of fun, and the rewriting is a lot of work, but that can be fun too. I enjoy it. I enjoy editing as well, but that initial creative process and just trying to get to, figure out how to tell a greater story. I guess that's what I'm trying to do. And at some level, at this point, I'm just trying to leave a legacy for my kids and people who know me.
You are going to spend some time in Mexico City where you'll be writing in the daytime and then exploring in the evening. Is that correct?
That is correct. A friend and I have organized our own writing retreat. So we're going to go down for 3 weeks and just hang out in Mexico City and write in the morning and, check out the museums and cafes in the afternoon and evening. And later on, our wives are going to come down and join us for the Day of the Dead ceremony.
That sounds like a fantastic adventure.
Sometimes that's what you got to do, make your own adventure.
Make your own adventure. And back to Alaska. You returned to that area how many years later?
45 years later, last summer, I went back with Chris and another friend, and we spent 3 weeks there. And it was an entirely different experience because it was warm, for one. We had to deal with mosquitoes and not the brutal cold. I'm a little mobility challenged these days, so I couldn't quite roam like I used to. But it was a fabulous experience. I think that the best part about it was after the first week, after you get used to being in a strange environment, it just became such a mindful experience because I just had to do everything at the pace that it happened. And if going to get water took an hour and you decided to take 3 because you saw a bird you wanted to follow, then that's what you did. And, there's that old saying, the hours were long, but the days were short, because we just lived up there, and then all of a sudden it was over.
And as you look back on your adventures in Alaska, Arizona, very different regions, very different climates, and other parts of the world, what goes through your mind?
Boy, I don't know. As a teacher, you ask kids, to compare and contrast. And so as I'm traveling, I'm always looking for similarities and differences. And I guess what goes through my mind is there's a lot of beautiful diversity out there, and yet at the end of the day, it's all connected.
Jeff Hartman, retired educator and prolific writer, I guess I can say, with 3 novels under your belt. Thank you very much for joining us, and good luck as you move forward.
Thank you.
Jeff Hartman's most recent novel was published in 2024. It's called How to Win the Nobel Peace Prize, and it's a story about a man and his autistic granddaughter who moves in with him and his wife one summer. For Arizona Spotlight, I'm Tony Paniagua.
Thank you for listening to Arizona Spotlight. This show is a production of AZPM and is posted weekly at azpm.org. The production engineer is Jim Blackwood. I'm producer and host Mark McLemore.
This has been an original production of AZPM News.